Your brain can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. A Harvard neuroscientist lost all brain function due to a stroke. But by harnessing the power of neuroplasticity, they literally rewired an entirely new brain. Even what seems impossible becomes your reality when you learn to trick your brain the right way. Trick your brain.
Hello and welcome back to Trick Your Brain. Are you giving up on your dreams right now because of thoughts like these? This is just who I am. I was born poor, I'm not smart enough, or it's already too late. Are you constantly repeating these words of defeat to yourself? But today, we are going to talk about the incredible ability of the brain to overcome every single limitation. This isn't just a theory. It is a true story, proven by a neuroscientist who experimented on her very own brain. A Harvard neuroscientist who spent her life studying the brain lost everything to a massive stroke at the age of 37. She couldn't speak. She couldn't read. She couldn't even walk. Worst of all, she couldn't even remember who she was. But 8 years later, she returned with a completely new brain. How is this possible? She tricked her brain by harnessing the power of neuroplasticity. Today, I'm going to share that miraculous story with you. Because we all have the same biological potential, you have the power to trick your brain too.
My name is Jill Bolte Taylor. I was a 37-year-old neuroscientist teaching brain anatomy at Harvard Medical School. On the morning of December 10th, 1996, I woke up just like any other day, but something was wrong. A sharp pain shot through the left side of my head. I thought, is it a migraine? I tried to ignore it, but it only got worse. I went into the bathroom to take a shower, and suddenly, I felt as if my body was no longer my own. I tried to move my right arm, but it wouldn't respond properly. This is strange. Something is wrong. That was the moment I realized I was having a stroke. Because I was a neuroscientist, I recognized the symptoms. But even knowing them, I couldn't stop it. A blood vessel had burst in my brain, and my brain cells were dying. What was even scarier was that my thoughts were growing dim. My left brain, which usually analyzed things logically, was slowly shutting down. I couldn't read numbers, and I couldn't remember phone numbers. I barely managed to try and call 911, but I didn't understand what the buttons were. The numbers looked like nothing more than strange symbols. To think that I, a neuroscientist, could not read a number. When I was rushed to the hospital, the doctor asked, "What is your name?" But I couldn't answer. I couldn't remember who I was. The name Jill Bolte Taylor, being a Harvard professor, being a neuroscientist, it had all vanished. What was more despairing was the fact that I couldn't speak. I had thoughts in my head, but I couldn't express them in words. It was like being trapped in a prison. I was locked inside myself, unable to communicate with the outside world. When my mother came to my hospital room, I didn't recognize her. She was just a stranger, crying in front of me. My mother held my hand and said, "Jill, it's Mom. Do you recognize me?" But all I could do was shake my head. The doctors told my mother, "The brain damage is severe. Both the language and motor centers are damaged. A full recovery seems unlikely." In that moment, I heard my mother collapse. I lay in my bed and thought, the brain I've studied all my life can fall apart like this. The stroke I've explained to my patients. This is what it truly is. The most devastating part was that I had lost myself. All the memories I had built over 37 years, all the knowledge, all my abilities disappeared in an instant. I felt as if I had returned to a blank slate. But as the days passed, I discovered something amazing. My left brain was damaged, but my right brain was still alive. And looking at the world through my right brain, I saw a completely different world. My head, which used to be filled with logic and analysis, became peaceful and quiet. I couldn't speak, but my senses became more acute. The warm touch of the caregiver, the warmth of the sunlight coming through the window, the chirping of the birds. These things felt more vivid than ever before, and I realized something more important than anything else. My brain is still alive. Even if some parts are damaged, the rest is fine. So, can't I rebuild it? Because I was a neuroscientist, I knew about neuroplasticity. I knew that the brain can change throughout life and can create new neural connections. If so, I can reconstruct my brain too. When rehabilitation began, I made a special request to the therapists. I couldn't say it in words, of course, so I expressed it through gestures. "Please don't treat me like a child. I am an adult. I am a neuroscientist." At first, the therapists didn't understand, but when they saw me continuing to respond and putting in the effort, they changed. "This patient is different. She doesn't give up. she keeps trying. The first thing I started with was relearning words. I started with the word mom. Even making the M sound was difficult because my tongue wouldn't move properly. But I practiced for hours every day. Ma. Ma. When I finally managed to make the sound, my mother cried with joy. Jill spoke. She said mom. In that moment, I knew my brain is reconnecting. It was the same with practicing to walk. At first, I couldn't even take a single step. The signals from my brain to my legs had been cut off, but I imagined it every day. I am walking. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Strangely, as I kept repeating the imagination of walking, sensation actually began to return to my legs. At first, it was a tiny tremor, but it grew clearer and clearer. After 1 year, I was able to manage basic speech and walking, but I didn't want to stop there. I was a neuroscientist. I want to return to that level. So I began a more challenging rehabilitation, reading numbers, writing, complex thinking step by step. I retrained my brain. The hardest part was regaining scientific thought. In the past, I could visualize complex brain structures in 3D, but now, even a simple diagram was hard to understand. But I didn't give up. Every day, I opened my brain anatomy books and looked at the pictures. At first, they looked like nothing more than meaningless lines, but after a few months, I began to understand them one by one. Ah, this is the brainstem. This is the cerebral cortex. By the second year, I could finally read a simple research paper. I couldn't read as fast as before, but I could understand the content. The joy of that moment was like finding a lost treasure. From the third year, I began to write. Little by little, I wanted to record my experience. I want to share with others what a neuroscientist discovered while experiencing a stroke. At first, writing even one sentence was difficult. Words got jumbled in my head and wouldn't form into a sentence. But I practiced a little bit every day, starting with a single line in a diary. I eventually became able to write longer pieces. By the fourth year, I was able to stand in the classroom again. I wasn't as fluent as before, but I could teach neuroscience to students. The students were amazed. I can't believe the professor actually had a stroke. As 5, then 6 years passed, my brain continued to develop. New connections were made, and healthy parts began to take over for the damaged ones. It was as if the brain was reconstructing itself. The most surprising thing was that I became more creative than before. My logical thinking had weakened due to the left brain damage, but instead, my intuition and creativity flourished. I began to approach complex problems in entirely different ways. In the 7th year, I started writing my book, titled My Stroke of Insight, containing the story of a neuroscientist's stroke and the journey of recovery. 8 years later, I stood on the TED stage. Millions of people around the world heard my story. When I said my stroke was a gift, many people were moved to tears. Through the 8-year recovery process, I discovered something amazing. My brain had become a completely different brain from before. The damaged parts were compensated for by others, and countless new neural connections had been forged. It felt as if my brain had been completely replaced with a brand new one. And what was even more surprising was that I could directly feel and observe this entire process. As a neuroscientist, I experienced the changes in my brain in real time. There are very few people in the world who have had such an experience. The most important truth I realized was this: the brain is much more powerful and flexible than we think. Even as we age or suffer damage, if we train the right way, it can be renewed infinitely. In the recovery process, the most important thing was the power of imagination. Before speaking, I first imagined myself speaking. Before walking, I first imagined myself walking. Then, the brain began to turn those imaginations into reality. The brain truly could not distinguish between imagination and reality. The things I practiced in my imagination manifested as actual abilities. This was the power of neuroplasticity. I have now become a better person than I was before. Before the stroke, I was far too logical and analytical, but now I can utilize both emotion and intuition. I have gained a whole brain.
The story of Jill Bolte Taylor is living proof of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change its structure and function throughout your entire life. In the past, people believed that once the brain was damaged, it could never recover. However, it has now been scientifically proven that the brain can constantly reorganize itself. In Dr. Jill's case, the language and motor centers of her left brain were severely damaged. But through constant imagination training and repetitive learning, other areas of her brain began to take over those functions. The power of imagination played the most critical role in this process. When we observe the brain using imaging technology, the areas that activate during a real action and during the imagination of that same action are almost identical. According to a study from University College London, when stroke patients practiced imagining hand movements, new neural connections actually formed in their motor cortex. Imagination changed the physical structure of the brain. Research from the National Institutes of Health shows that about 700 new neurons are generated in the adult brain every single day. What functions these new neurons will perform is determined by our thoughts and actions. When Dr. Jill repeated the imagination of speaking, new neurons responsible for language were created and connected. When she imagined walking, the neural network responsible for movement was rebuilt. This is exactly how you hack the brain. The brain accepts imagined experiences as real and creates the corresponding neural structures. A study at Harvard Medical School divided stroke patients into two groups. One group received only traditional rehabilitation, while the other group practiced imagining their recovered selves for 30 minutes every day. The results were astonishing. The recovery speed of the group that used imagination training was twice as fast. Neuroscientists at Stanford University have discovered that brain plasticity lasts a lifetime regardless of age. They found that new neural connections were actively forming even in the brains of people in their 80s. The brain cannot distinguish between the impossible and the possible. Whatever you imagine, the brain tries to make it a reality. Just like Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, you can completely reshape your brain. Step 1. Accept your current state. First, accept your current condition exactly as it is. Dr. Jill was in despair at first, but she could only begin the reconstruction after accepting her reality. Your brain also has infinite possibilities. Step 2. Clearly imagine your target state. Visualize exactly what you want to become. Dr. Jill imagined herself speaking, walking, and teaching every day. You should vividly picture your successful, healthy, and happy self as well. Step 3. Sensory imagination training. Do not just imagine visually. Use all of your senses. Imagine the joy of success, the sound of applause, the congratulations, and the sense of pride. The brain accepts all of this as a real experience. Step 4. Consistent daily repetition. Dr. Jill trained every day for 8 years without giving up. Neuroplasticity is strengthened only through repetition. Practice your imagination training consistently for at least 30 minutes a day. Step 5. Gradually increase challenges. Start with simple things at first. Dr. Jill started with the single word mom. As small successes accumulate, the brain begins to believe that bigger challenges are also possible. Here are the specific methods Dr. Jill actually used. First is the morning rebirth ritual. Every morning, as soon as she opened her eyes, Dr. Jill told herself that today her brain is being reborn. Starting the day this way makes the brain more open to change. Second is redefining failure as learning. Dr. Jill viewed the inability to speak not as a failure, but as a process where the brain is finding new pathways. She told herself that right now her brain is looking for a better way. Look at your own difficulties in the same way. Third is the balance of emotion and logic. Interestingly, Dr. Jill became a more complete person after her left brain was damaged because her right brain became more developed. She was able to use emotion and intuition alongside her logical side. Do not use only one side of your brain. Use both. Fourth is the connection with supporters. Dr. Jill's mother encouraged her for 8 years without ever giving up. She never lost faith that Jill would definitely come back. Find people who will support your change. Their belief sends positive signals to your brain. Your brain is changing even at this very moment. Just like Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor lost everything at 37 but became a better person in 8 years, you too can create a new brain at any time. Age does not matter. Past failures do not matter. The brain changes toward the future, not toward the past. Do you know why 27 million people watched Dr. Jill's TED Talk? It is because she showed how incredible the potential of the human brain is. You have that amazing brain, too. Start your brain reconstruction project right now. Please leave the phrase hacking the brain in the comments. The moment you post this comment, your brain will already begin to create new neural connections. Like Dr. Jill, you will experience miraculous changes. The brain cannot tell the difference between imagination and reality. The moment you imagine success, your brain starts to make that success a reality. If you hack the brain, reality changes. Like Jill Bolte Taylor, you can start a completely new life.
Trick your brain, and your reality will change.